Aquarius people, attention, all fixed signs. This is our first moon in Aquarius transit. Pluto's not there. Saturn's not there. It's just going to feel weird. And I say weird because you're like almost going to expect it to feel heavy, and it doesn't feel as heavy. Good morning, everybody, and welcome back to the Astrology Report, this time for March 13th through the 19th of 2023. My name is Cam White. If you haven't seen me before, make sure you like this video if you're enjoying the content. Make sure you subscribe. It really helps me out, and I don't want you to miss any of the new videos I'm going to be posting as well. Comment below. Let me know how crazy last week was for you and what you're looking forward to this week, because this week we have so much going on, so let's just jump straight into it. Monday, relatively probably the only chill day of this week. The moon's going to be moving into Sagittarius, and it's going to make a square to Saturn. So I left off last week talking about like the moon in Scorpio and the pain and the resentment and having to purge all of that stuff. And this is where I feel like the Scorpio stuff will be easier to deal with than this first moon in Sag ingress. And the reason being is the moon will ingress into Sagittarius early in Monday morning, but it'll immediately square Saturn. So something I talk a lot about is the moon in Sagittarius. It's our emotions, right? It's very connected to our vision, our faith. Where is our point B? Where are we aiming at? The problem is that it's squaring Saturn in Pisces. You can't have a goal to jump somewhere if you don't believe that you can jump, right? Like the moon in Sagittarius is like, oh, I have this vision. I just want to go here and I just want to escape and run away. But if you don't actually, because here's the thing. No matter where you go, there you are. I struggle with this problem. I'm a Sag rising. I want to move every 5 seconds, and I just love the thrill of driving and leaving and starting something new. But this is one of those things where wherever you go, there you are. With this moon and Sag squaring Saturn, it's like, can you actually escape? Can you actually believe, like, with the moon and Sag being optimistic and faithful and, you know, just what are we envisioning? Where are we going? Why try to look at somewhere else to go when you have everything you need right here? Like that moon and Sag squaring Saturn and Pisces is not relatively easy. Hold on, I'm actually going to take a seat for this one. Oh, I'm a little too low. Maybe I won't take a seat. But the thing is with this moon ingress is it's going to be not as fun as a typical moon and Sag transit. The thing is here is, while you want to be optimistic and you want to see what's next, it can't involve escaping. It can't involve, it can't involve the grass is greener on the other side mindset. With the moon squaring Saturn, it's kind of like, no, you're here. You have to make the best of what you have here. You can't think about how amazing and great things would be if just everything was different, or if that you can go somewhere else. The problem is you have to make do with what you have here. And again, like I said last week, none of this stuff's going to be easy, guys. But that's what makes it fun. It makes it more rewarding when nothing's easy. When you work really hard for it and you earn it. I made a delineation episode about this. I think it's episode 11, earning versus manifesting. Everyone's like, oh, I just want to manifest my dream life. It's like, that's such bullshit. It's like you have to earn those things. And it feels better to earn something rather than just having it given to you on a silver platter. Because then again, like I said last week, you know, someone could take it away from you. And if it just came to you on a silver platter, it's not going to matter to you. And you're just going to be right back where you were. Versus if you earned it and it goes away, you know that you can do it a second time. You know that you can do it again. And so with this moon squaring Saturn thing, it just seems like while you want to be optimistic and you want to see what the future has in store, you understand that that's neither here or there. You're in the moment. And that's what I love about Pisces. Pisces is really like, it's in my opinion, the most spiritual sign, because when it comes to like meditation and spirituality, it's all about things that are in the moment. It's not about the future. It's about who are you right now? Who are you at your worst? Because that's who you really are. But this moon square Saturn transit is a feeling of optimism, but knowing that it's not about like, you can't just dream and imagine what life is going to be like later with what is like right in front of you isn't working. You have to make the best of your situation right here, right now. Like if you want, like, it's one of those things where I said last week, you know, when you want to like live something, if you want to manifest something, you have to envision it and bring the feeling of what it feels like to have that on you. And with this transit, it's not about being like, oh, I'm just going to feel so much better when this is done. It's like, How do you feel better right now? How do you take control of this right now? And this is our first challenge with Saturn ingressing into Pisces. This is our first moon square and we're going to have some issues. It's not going to be easy. All of us Sag placements, all of us mutable placements, it's not going to be easy. We're going to have to really go, wow, I have to make these changes here. If I like, for example, if you're like, I want a better relationship and it'll be so much better in the future when I have the person that I actually want. But if you're not doing the work to be the person that you want to be right now, then that future relationship isn't going to do anything. It's just going to be just as bad. You have to develop the person that you want to be right now. We'll talk more about that. We move on to Tuesday. We got a lot going on. Pi Day. I never remember big holidays, but I remember stupid shit like Pi Day. The moon will trine Jupiter. The moon will then square Mercury. And then it will oppose Mars and it will square Neptune while Mars squares Neptune. This is a lot. Okay. So bear with me here as I kind of go over every single one of these little transits. It's like I said before, it's one of those like little ping pong events, not ping pong, pinball things where the ball's just going everywhere. Number one, the moon's going to trine Jupiter, where I think once we kind of get over the issue of like, okay, I can't just think that everything's going to be better in the future. I have to do something about this right now, right? The moon then trines Jupiter, Jupiter's still in Aries, and we only have a little bit more time of this. Jupiter goes into Taurus in May. And in my Jupiter and Aries delineation episode, I talk like you're not going to reap the rewards of Jupiter and Taurus if you don't fight the battles of Jupiter and Aries. And the thing is, the moon trines Jupiter, there's this level of like, you know what? I have the confidence to do this. I have the vision. I have what I want, and I can do this. On Monday, it's going to be like, oh, you can't just dream about the future. You got to do what you got to do right here, right now. But on Tuesday, there's this level of confidence that comes up. There's this level of belief in yourself that comes up. Then the moon will make a square to Mercury. And this is where it gets challenging. The moon making the square to Mercury, it's not going to make sense, okay? There's no rule book on how to do any of this stuff. You've got to figure it out your own. You can't just Google this stuff, right? Like the answers to life, everybody has such a unique and different life, and all the answers are usually pretty simple. But you've got to learn how to apply those simple solutions into your own situation. And so I think as the moon squares Mercury, you can't be worried about the specifics of it. And I think that's going to be challenging. The moon in Sag is like, well, I just want to go here and do there. But it's like, well, how am I going to do that? How do I have the time? Or how do I have the money? Or where am I actually going? And so if you're going to just dream up this big future plan, what you're going to realize is all the specifics are going to get in your way. And there's a level of that where, again, everything is good and bad. It's all on a spectrum. Where I think the bad is like, again, if you're just expecting to go like everything's going to be better in the future, then all of those specifics and those details will tamper down your confidence, and it'll make you go, well, I don't know how I'm going to get the money, or I don't know how I'm going to get the time, or I don't know what's next, or I don't know what I'm doing here. The good part about this is you don't need those things. Like faith is about going without like evidence and going without logic or going without rationale and still believing in what you want to believe. And I think this moon in Sag opportunity with it squaring Mercury is kind of like, it may not make sense. It may, and again, with what you're dealing with right now and where you want to go, it may not make logical sense. It's kind of like the Karate Kid. Wax on, wax off. And he's like, why the fuck am I doing this? He's like, don't worry about it. Like, stop asking questions. That's kind of like what this is here. Then the moon will go opposite Mars. So at the same time, let me go back to this image. At the same time, Mars is squaring Neptune. So this is where this is really going to get triggered, is when the moon squares Mars and Neptune. And here's the thing with Mars square Neptune. And this is a cascading level of events because there's so many things going on this week. It's just not going to be easy. Mars in Gemini is acting on the information that we have. It's going, Mars was retrograde in Gemini for a long time, reworking the information. What is the data that we have now? And where are we moving forward with it? Now that we're moving forward with it, it squares Neptune. And Mars is about to leave shadow. Mars leaves shadow on Wednesday, okay? So we're almost done wrapping up all of this shit that we've been dealing with since realistically September, late August, September of last year. But as Mars squares Neptune, the information's not going to make sense. But I think with the moon in Sag, going opposite Mars, you have to think bigger. Okay. Like Mars in Gemini squaring Neptune and Pisces also like, why am I doing this wax on, wax off with my hands? Right. Like it's actually very Mars in Gemini. And the moon and Sag going opposite it is like your teacher being like, don't question it. Just do what I'm saying. Just have that faith, have that trust, have that belief. So a lot of Tuesday is moving forward with actions that don't make sense. I think where you're going to struggle on Tuesday is if you want it all to make sense. If you want it all to be black and white clear, it's not going to be. Where I think you can propel and have growth and have a good outcome is trusting, having faith, and moving forward anyway. Where I see a bigger challenge, though, is Mars square Neptune, because the problem with this is since Mars has been retrograde and it's been in Gemini for so long, it's like, we have all this information. We're working it out. But as it squares Neptune, it's like, oh, maybe that wasn't the correct information we were going off of. Maybe there's something diluted about this. Maybe there's something that I don't actually understand, right? Like if your whole plan was to sell your house and then all of a sudden, all the housing market drops and then interest rates go up and rent goes up, then it's like, okay, well, now what do I do? So there's this level of like confusion of where to go next because all of this information you've been raking through over the past few months kind of goes out the door. All by this point, there's new information that completely changes your plans. Because again, this is all in the superior aspect to Mars here. This is in control of what Mars is doing. And we're about to have this Mercury Cazimi in Pisces on top of Neptune squaring Mars. So all I'm sitting here to say is it's not going to make sense. You have to keep going anyway. And all of the information that you've been working off the past few months may not actually be what it is as we move forward. But I think as the moon's in Sag, the moon's also going to make a square to Neptune after it goes opposite Mars. And it's just kind of like, look, you have to be, it isn't going to make sense. It is going to be confusing. You are going to feel lost. And this is maybe even one of those moments too, where you get lost in the forest. Like you don't want to like keep walking around. Like you want to stay put so people can find you. So a part of this is almost like, maybe just don't do anything. Maybe just wait a moment to have a little bit more clarity. But the other part of this is that's not exactly the best analogy to use here because I feel like there's a lot of forward moving momentum. This is a waning moon, so things are calming down a little bit. So we're getting ready for the new moon in Aries, which will happen next week. But this is just kind of a moment of like, where do I go from here? What am I doing here? And I think that is going to be mentally challenging for all of us. Because look how much stuff is in the mutable signs: Moon, Mercury, Saturn, Sun, Neptune, Mars, all in the mutable stuff. Everything's very confusing and changing. But we get into Wednesday. The moon will move into Capricorn and it will sextile Saturn. You pull up your britches, you put your big boy pants on, and you just do it anyway, okay? The sun will conjoin Neptune and Mars will leave shadow. A lot to talk about here, but let's first talk about the moon. I think as the moon goes into Capricorn again, detaching from the emotions, just putting yourself to work. Again, work is God's gift to us. A lot of people, especially my generation, work is horrible. Work is actually really good. It's just the conditions of what society is right now makes it not as good. I'm not saying, wages need to be more fair. Everything that's going on is corrupt and bullshit. But the idea is like, you're still going to work no matter what. Idle hands are the devil's workshop. If you're just going to sit there bored scrolling, you're going to literally go crazy. We already are. My generation, Gen Z, is literally mentally insane. And because they're too stimulated with things versus just focusing and putting their, not to say that they don't work, but it's more so with the moon in Capricorn. This is an excellent time to just, for example, if you're going through a really emotional time at home, or I was just reading about kids in the military and how I think it was during boot camp, one of their sergeants asked, how many for you was the first time that you got 3 meals a day? How many of you guys was this the first time you got 2 meals a day? How many of you guys for the first time was this the first time that you had your own bed? And this is kind of like one of those things where, in the military, like, we just take so many things for granted, where that moon in Capricorn, just like doing the work, emotionally checking out. You might have a rough day. For example, the boot camp sucks, but if you're not getting 3 meals a day, you're sharing a bed with all of your siblings or your cousins, then you have like your own bed. You don't have what I'm trying to say here is that may not be the best analogy, but what I'm trying to say here is you could be having a hard time at home. You can be having a hard time in your personal life. And sometimes work is the escape from that. And that's okay. It doesn't mean you have to like, love your job and be like super pro about your, corporation or whatever, but the work is the gift to get out of those situations. And what's great about work is generally speaking, this isn't for everybody, but you're mostly helping other people. Like in work, there's no other work that is more fulfilling than helping and serving other people. And you take yourself out of it. And so this is what I'm trying to say here with the moon in Capricorn sextiling Saturn. Take yourself out of it. Just detach from the emotional part of it and just do what's in front of you. Do what you have to do. And I think it's that sextile Saturn that's going to help you, like, figure out this faith stuff, figure out this trust stuff, figure out what is changing for you. This isn't a moon in Capricorn with Saturn in Aquarius. This is a moon in Capricorn with Saturn in Pisces now. You have to understand that, like, the moon's in Saturn's sign, and it will be for the next few days in this week. You have to understand there are changes afoot. The other thing is the sun's going to be conjoining Neptune. It's not going to be clear. I always talk about the sun on Neptune as kind of like putting a flashlight underneath like a swamp or a pond, and or putting on your blinders in fog. Like, there's a reason why there's fog lights. Fog lights actually are lower on your car and they light up the road underneath you so you can actually see the road. But if you're driving in the fog, if you've never driven in the fog before, your first intuition is like, oh, let me turn on my brights. But when you turn on your brights, everything else gets foggier. So I think as the sun's on top of Neptune, if you're trying to like, I'm confused, I don't know what's going on, let me put even more light to this, you're going to get even more confused and lost. Versus if you understand where to place your attention, if you understand where to place your lights, which is, again, on the ground, you don't need to see what's in front of you when you're driving in the fog. You just need to see the stripes on the road to know that you're in the lane. You don't need to know what's exactly in front of you. You just need to know that you're on the path still. And this is one of those days of understanding, like, hey, you're on the path. It's not clear what's ahead of you, but as long as you know that you're on that path, you're going to be fine. And then Mars leaves shadow. Here's this is the good news in my opinion, because Mars was in the same degree back in Halloween. Mars has been in Gemini since late August, all of September, all of October. Then around the end of October, beginning of November, it stationed retrograde. Then it went all of November, all of December, all of January, all of February. And now we're here. And we're finally moving past the things that have been going on since Halloween, going back and forth with information, going back and forth with, what do I like Mars and Gemini, arguments, information, stimulation, aggressive curiosity. And at this point, we're finally done. And I mentioned this in my in my March rising sign horoscopes over on my Patreon. Like, the thing is here is we are done with the things that we've been dealing with over the past 7-8 months. But the problems are still in the same sign. What I mean by that is Mars might be out of shadow. So we're done with all the stuff we've been dealing with for the past few months, and now we're in new territory. But now we're just at it's still Mars and Gemini. It's still the same issues. Again, communication, information, Mars and Gemini. It's like doing this, doing that, going back and forth. And what I like about Mars leaving shadow is we're finally done with the past. Like, we're moving on over all of the stuff we've been really reworking and and just dealing with problems going back and forth over the past few months. And we're done with that, but now we're on to new problems in the same area. Okay. That's for some people that can be good. For other people that can be like, oh, cool, I'm over this. It's kind of like working on your car. You might be done working on some bullshit, electrical issue that you couldn't figure out, but then all of a sudden your transmission has an issue. And it's like, ugh, like, right when you just got that wrapped up, now you're on to a new problem in the same area. So on Wednesday's going to feel really weird because it's going to feel like you're moving on to something else while it's still very similar. It's still very much the same. But the other issue is that it's just going to feel like this is all a trust exercise. Like, you got to understand that you're on the right path. Like, make sure and check that you're on the right path. Well, I mean, if you're driving in the fog and you don't have your fog lights on, you'll know if you're not on the right path real fucking quick, because you'll be in the other lane. A car will hit you. You'll go off a cliff. You'll know real fucking quick. But make sure you're on the right path. Take the emotions out of it. Don't be scared about driving in the fog. Just drive slow and work on and just focus on what's in front of you, which is the road, which is the steering wheel, and just keep driving. Okay. We get to Thursday. So much shit this week. So the moon's going to make a trine to Uranus. Then Mercury will conjoin Neptune. Venus will square Pluto. Mercury will square Mars. Then Venus enters Taurus. This is a big week, guys. I cannot emphasize that enough. So let's what do we start with? Let's start with the moon trining Uranus. So what I like about the moon trining Uranus, again, this is a happy moment, a happy accident. Moon in Capricorn, sextiling Uranus is like, again, a solution appears that's disruptive. It's kind of like, for example, if you've ever driven in Arizona, a lot of desert places, when you're driving at night and you're driving down the way that you're supposed to be going, they'll have those little yellow reflectors. But if you look over to the opposing side, the oncoming traffic, all of the reflectors are red from your perspective. And that changes depending on the quality of the road. Like if you're out in the middle of the Mojave, like some of those roads are just suck and you can't see. But then you get to like a nice paved road, you'll see that there's these yellow reflectors that let you know, okay, you're in the lane, you're where you're at. And if you look over to the left on oncoming traffic, you'll see the red reflectors. So that's not the area you're supposed to be in. It's a really brilliant idea. But the thing is, here is like the moon trining Uranus is like all of a sudden something comes up that's a little bit disruptive. And maybe the reflector analogy isn't the most disruptive thing ever, but this is definitely solution oriented. This is definitely like, oh, now I'm understanding this. I have some type of a breakthrough moment. Let's say, going back to that work analogy, you just detach emotionally, you do the work in front of you. Maybe because you're detached emotionally and you're just doing what you have to do, maybe there's a problem at work that has its solution solved for you because you're not so invested into it, because you're just doing what you have to do. It just seems like a solution appears that's really easy. The other thing is Mercury's going to be on top of Neptune. It's just nothing's going to make sense for a minute. For the next like 2 days, I mean, this week's until Friday, Saturday, nothing's really going to make sense. Mercury on top of Neptune, information's distorted. Information is very unclear. It's obfuscated. It's very disturbing. And when I say disturbing, again, if you're expecting clarity and black and white answers, it's not going to be there. Again, like I said last week, a lot of this month is the geopolitics. A lot of this month is the news stories that you're going to hear. And I've done better about not always bringing that up in my weekly horoscopes, but like Mercury on top of Neptune, more information, and doesn't make sense. Like my best example of Mercury on Neptune was right when the lockdowns hit. Mercury conjoined Neptune and stationed retrograde, where it was just Trump and Fauci going back and forth saying two completely opposite things and changing their minds on everything every day. It was just like no one even knew what was going on at that point. So that's kind of like what's going on here. Not a lot. There's information, but it's confusing and it's not clear. And Mercury will square Mars. Like, it's kind of like having to deal with a drunk person, but the drunk person is in charge of like where you're going. Like, there's only speaking in riddles, and you're just like, I just give me the information. Where am I supposed to go? But you have to like solve this riddle that is unsolvable and doesn't actually really make sense. And it's just kind of like confusing and frustrating. So I find this to be this is going to, like, for example, miscommunications are going to be rampant this day. You said this. Well, I didn't say that. Well, what did you mean when you said this? And there's going to be a lot of arguing on this day. So try not to get too wrapped up into that. Because here's the thing. It's just cloudy. Okay. It's just confusing. No one's really seeing straight. When Mercury goes into Aries, things will be much more clear. But for right now, it's just confusing, and you might have to hash things out. You might have to communicate things and just be like, hey, I don't understand this. Hey, I don't know what's next. Hey, I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know where this is going. Mercury on top of Neptune squaring Mars is just and also too, Mercury on top of Neptune is like communicating, I don't know what's going on, but then it squares Mars and it's like, well, I need to know what's going on because I fucking got shit to do. So this is, it's frustrating. The other thing is Venus is going to be squaring Pluto. And what's hard about this is, Venus in Aries wants to have fun. It's that impulse. But as it squares Pluto, again, Pluto's in the superior position here to Venus. It's the fear and the control and the power stuff. Like Venus in Aries, how much of this stuff is, being influenced by outside factors? How much, like Venus in Aries too is, you don't want a power trip. You don't want to just go, oh, just because I can, I will. Like, just because you can doesn't mean you should. But the other part of it too is just, I think a lot of it's also kind of breaking through fear. I mean, Pluto's about to leave, and Venus in Aries is like, how bad do you want it? How bad do you want to go for it? Because Venus also enters Taurus on Thursday, right? Did I say that? Yeah, and Venus enters Taurus. So as Venus enters Taurus, I mean, for one, hallelujah, something good happening. But Venus, value, pleasure, connection, indulgence. She's going into her home sign. She's going to be hitting the North Node like almost immediately. There's this like really feeling comfortable and really feeling secure in your values and feeling secure and stable with enjoyment and pleasure. And so The Venus part really shifts on Thursday, where it's kind of like, breaking the rules almost a little bit. Again, there's it's duality for most people. Like, okay, just because you can doesn't mean you should, but there's another part of it that's like, all right, well, like, if are you just going to let fear and power overcome you, or are you going to break through that? Because I think as Venus goes into Taurus, it's kind of like a big push, like mentally, and then it's like all of a sudden you're saturated in good feelings. You're like feeling secure, feeling stable. So I really, really like that. Let's move on into Friday. Friday, we have the Mercury Cazimi. This one's rough. I'm not looking forward to this Mercury Cazimi. Well, I am and I'm not. The moon will also move into Aquarius and square Venus, and Venus sextile Saturn. So there's a lot. This is just a lot, okay? It's really back and forth. Mercury Cazimi on top of Neptune. Here's the reality. A light bulb moment's going to come off, and nothing's going to be clear. It's a two-way street here. On one side, you get information. It's not what you expected. It's not what you wanted. Again, it's still squaring Mars zodiacally and almost by degree. So it's going to throw a wrench in your plans. So if you're just expect answers to if you're expecting information to come in, just know it's not going to be, for one, it's not going to be clear. It may not be what you want to hear, and it might leave you even more confused. The other part of this is Mercury Cazimi on top of Neptune. Like, for one, I would imagine a lot of dreams. Like, a lot of people are going to have some crazy dreams. I'd imagine some type of insight that doesn't, because what I do like about this Pisces stuff is that things don't necessarily have to make sense, right? Like, they really don't. And so with Mercury Cazimi on top of Neptune is like, for example, you can watch a movie and the movie's all movie magic. It's all CGI, but that can leave you with a clarity of what you want to do with your life, with like what solutions that you need. Who do you need to be to make the changes that you want in your life? And so there's a part of this that's just like, it's confusing. It's you're not really sure how to connect the dots, but there is a clarity here. And the clarity is a lot of uncertainty. Well, it's also kind of like, doing acid or shrooms or DMT. It's just kind of like you have this sudden clarity, but putting it into words is not going to be easy. It's not going to be simple. But there is a clarity. And I think I would also say it's a lot of it's emotional. And what I like is all of this stuff is ruled by Jupiter and Aries. There's a lot of like confidence, a lot of, courage that's kind of coming in with this. It's just one of those things that if you're expecting black and white, simple answers, it's not going to work that way. But I would expect some type of clarity that at least gives you some spiritual insight that's like, okay, I don't really know how to put this into words, but I do know what the message was, if that makes sense. The moon will move into Aquarius. It's our first moon in Aquarius, people. Attention, all fixed signs. This is our first moon in Aquarius transit. Pluto's not there. Saturn's not there. God, I just think it's not, it's still a moon in Aquarius, so still kind of being more connected to humanity and society, but without all of the like heaviness. Like, it's like, okay, like, here's my people. This is how I feel. This is how I'm connected. Like, it's just going to feel like weird. Like, and I say weird because you're like almost going to expect it to feel heavy, and it doesn't feel as heavy. It's still going to be that Aquarius stuff. So, maybe people fighting back and forth and the tribalism, but it's Saturn. I mean, like, the other way I look at this is maybe this tribalism ends a little bit. Saturn's in Pisces. We got to come together. Moon's in Aquarius. Maybe it's time to recognize how we can come together as people, how we can come together as a society. But it squares Venus and Taurus. It's not going to be fun. It's not going to be like, admitting you're wrong, or admitting, like having to meet the other party halfway is not easy. That's how I would explain that. And it also just might be like, connecting with people, but not, it's kind of like, going out with people that, you don't want to go out with. And so it's not really fun, but you still want to see people. And Venus sextile Saturn. And this is what I do like is Venus is in Taurus. Like, we want to enjoy things. We actually are trying to feel good. And it's sextile Saturn. There's a constructive way of doing it. There is a very simple, disciplined, mature way of having fun, of being connected to what you enjoy and indulging yourself in that. And so a lot of that does look like, people. It may not be exactly what you want to do, or again, reconnecting with people might even be a better way to look at it. We get into Saturday. The moon will then square Uranus. It will sextile Jupiter, and then Mercury enters Aries. So a lot to talk about here, simply because the moon squares Uranus without Saturn. Moon in Aquarius squaring Uranus and Taurus. There's some kind of disruption that happens. It's not really going to go your way. It's going to be a little bit frustrating, but it's definitely not the end of the world. Not like when Saturn was squaring Uranus, where it was just kind of like, like this snapped and now I don't know what to do. Moon squaring Uranus is like things will be a little bit disruptive, but it's not all the end of the world. Okay. Just you have to understand the moon's in a fixed sign and the ruler of it is an immutable sign. So it's like, okay, this is where I'm being rigid and fixed. I just know I need to change. And that square to Uranus might just be like that zap that's like, hey, yeah, you're actually still being a little bit stubborn and fixed, and it's time to change. It's kind of like a smack on the hand. Like, if you're like reaching for the cookie jar and your mom smacks your hand, that's kind of like what this is. Mercury moves into, then the moon sextiles Jupiter, where there is this kind of like, hey, like, I know I have the confidence for this. I know I could feel powerful doing this. I know I can feel good doing this. It's just, there's a little bit of a disruption that calls into question, okay, like, are you going to still feel confident? Are you still going to go for it anyway? Are you just going to let a smack on the hand stop you from taking that cookie? I mean, again, it's both sides of this. It's like, okay, maybe don't take the cookie, but don't let that, be like, well, I can't have cookies and everyone's mean to me. Like, don't do that. But like, that's what I'm trying to say here. And the other thing is on Saturday, Mercury moves into Aries, where there is a lot of clarity, like Mercury, communication, our mindset, logic. It's in Aries. I want to be bold. I want to be blunt. I'm going to say it how it fucking is. I'm going to be clear. I'm charged up. Mercury is going to go into the sign that's ruled by Mars, and Mars is in the sign that's ruled by Mercury. There's a little bit of a mutual reception going on here, where now the clarity is starting to hit. Because Mars and Gemini just want some fucking clarity on the situation and knowing where to go next. Once Mercury moves into Aries, there's a very clear line of communication on what to do. And it's not like, again, after all of this uncertainty, it's not like everything all of a sudden makes sense. But as Mercury moves into Aries, it's much easier to put the pieces together and be like, okay, well, this is all confusing, but this is what I can do here. This is what I can do there. I may not have all of the plans for the rest of my life worked out, but this is where I can apply myself here. And Mercury in Aries is like, I need like the mental connection to action, right? Jupiter's also here. Mercury is bringing the Jupiter stuff down to earth. Jupiter's very pie in the sky. Mercury's very rational. So it's time to start actually applying this Jupiter and Aries stuff that we've been learning over the past year. Like actually bringing it down to earth, actually bringing it down to our consciousness, actually like knowing what to do, right? It's like if you get training in something and you do it once, it's a big learning experience. But then once you do it time and time again, then there's an event that comes up where you actually have to apply it. And it's easy because you've been training and you've been doing it for so long. That's the Mercury and Aries transit. It's just applying the stuff that we've been learning, but we actually have an event in which we get to apply it in. And then we get to Sunday. Oh, not that. Then we get to Sunday. The moon moves into Pisces and it will conjoin Saturn. This is going to be weird because this is our first moon in Pisces transit. And so where the moon in Pisces is like feeling aloof and feeling a little bit all over the place and overstimulated, as it conjoins Saturn, there's this like, I need to not be all over the place. When you are in a situation that is out of control, when you are in a panic situation, the worst thing you could do is panic. You have to like really muster up some emotional strength. And I think as the moon's conjoining Pisces is like knowing that you have to be the one to discipline yourself and be really serious. Like again, the moon in Pisces is feeling more relaxed, feeling more, connected to your environment. But the moon conjoining Saturn is like, are you making the best of this situation? Are you just distracting yourself? Because I think there's no distracting. Like the moon conjoining Saturn in Pisces is like, well, I can't just distract myself. Like, imagine electricity goes out and you can't scroll your little phone anymore or watch my amazing videos. And so it's like, oh, I just want to check out. I just want to, check out with my phone, and you can't. The moon, that's like moon conjoining Saturn and Pisces. It's like, well, you're here. There are no distractions. What now? Wherever you go, there you are. And this is that moment where it's like, okay, can you actually apply yourself? That's something that's going to like, can you read a book? Can you meditate? Can you go on a walk? That's the way I would have you think about this, is just not expecting to just be able to distract yourself or zone out, but actually having to do something that's constructive and good for you, that will require discipline and time. And this is stuff that's going to take 3 years to figure out and to really perfect. So we move on to next week. Next week, we got 3 things, but they're all major bag alerts. New moon in Aries. This is going to feel great. New moon, new you. Where are we starting? Now that we got through all of that misunderstanding and, now that the information is clear and it's not what we expected, now we get to go, all right, this is where I'm moving forward with. Pluto enters Aquarius. Here comes the apocalypse and World War III and all of the other stuff, the predictions I made. Make sure you watch my Pluto and Aquarius delineation episodes. And Mars moves into Cancer. I don't like that, but it is trining Saturn, so there is some good parts about it. But of course, we'll talk about more of this next week. So with final thoughts, I mean, here we are. We're in the avalanche at this time, guys. All of this is change. I think you should just take it as it comes, deal with it as it comes, and by next week, it'll be easier to start making plans on what to do next. So make sure you like this video if you like this. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. Comment, let me know your thoughts below. If you want to support my channel, consider going over to my Patreon as well. I do consultations, so if you want to know exactly what's going on for you and you want me to read your birth chart, consider booking a consultation with me over on my website. With that being said, I love and appreciate you guys, and I'll be seeing you next week.